Tonight, the man who led the rebellion against Russian President Vladimir Putin is now believed to be dead. A fatal plane crash with no survivors.
Anyone who is plotting against Putin, that he will find you and he will take you out. You are not safe anywhere.
The Wagner Group boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, listed as a passenger. The agonizing wait to return home in BC.
It was hard because I had to leave everything behind.
A clearer scope of the destruction as heavy rain provides some relief. Plus, tracking workers on company devices.
They did not tell us that this was going on.
CN Rail accused of spying on an employee after hours.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Anne-Marie Meadowake.
Good evening. Exactly 2 months after threatening Vladimir Putin with an armed rebellion, a Russian mercenary leader has reportedly been killed in a plane crash. Video posted online shows the smoking private jet falling from the sky, the plane disappearing from flight tracking sites as it flew over Russia. All 10 people on board were killed, according to Russian officials who say the passenger list included Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group. CTV's Judy Trin on what is known and what isn't about the crash.
A private jet plummeting from the sky and crashing into the countryside 300 kilometers north of Moscow, killing all 10 people on board. According to Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency, among the dead, Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of the Wagner Group, a powerful private militia that helped Russia gain territory in Ukraine. A social media account affiliated with the mercenaries called the deaths of Prigozhin and his right-hand commander Dmitry Utkin, who was also on the plane, an act of murder by traitors which will have catastrophic consequences. Canada and its allies are trying to get more information.
I will be able to have access to more information soon, and I will be also connecting with our ambassador to Russia.
There's not much that happens when Russia is not behind.
The timing of the incident comes exactly 2 months after Prigozhin pulled his mercenaries out of Ukraine to march on Moscow to seize control from Putin's generals.
Now Wagner will be very much under the control and direction of Putin. We won't see another repeat of a mutiny.
And I think that this sort of a dramatic message, shooting an airplane out of the sky, tells those oligarchs, anyone who is plotting against Putin, that he will find you and he will take you out.
It's not clear what caused the crash. Putin didn't comment, but at the time of Prigozhin's reported death, he was in Kursk handing out medals. Meanwhile, in the streets of Kyiv, fewer foes lifted spirits. This won't change anything on the front lines, but it's nice to know there's 1 less plane out there and 10 less Russians, says this Ukrainian. Even though they have lost their leader, analysts say there are no guarantees that the pay-for-hire fighters of the Wagner Group will fall in line behind Putin. Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Judy. Cooler temperatures and a recent downpour of rain in BC's hot zones are helping clear the thick blanket of smoke and bring some relief to firefighters in the hardest hit areas like the Okanagan and Shuswap regions.
Broadly, we're seeing a reduction in fire behavior, except for some areas which are still proving challenging along the existing perimeter.
Tonight, some evacuation orders are expected to gradually lift in Kelowna as anxious homeowners begin to face what's been lost to the fire. CTV's Vanessa Lee has that story.
The scale of the devastation is only starting to sink in. Charred hillsides and gutted homes are now in plain view, along with the unrelenting firefight. Helicopters are dumping buckets of water onto threatening hotspots, but for Bill, Jack, and dozens of others, it's too late.
It's hard because I had to leave everything behind, and so that was pretty traumatic, but we were hoping that everything was going to be fine the next day and we'd be back.
Jack never imagined this. His lakeside condo, his piece of paradise, gone. The historic Lake Okanagan Resort was home to around 200 units.
I had a lady next door. She was an 80-year-old lady, and she had 2 cats, and she wasn't going to leave. So I stopped everything that I was doing to try to help her, because she needed her cats and she needed to get out of the place.
She got out safely. Jack hopes to rebuild and will need help.
I didn't have the insurance coverage because of being in the location where it didn't renew, so I lost everything, which is really hard.
While evacuation orders are starting to lift, patience is wearing thin for so many still desperately waiting to go home. Authorities say streets are covered with branches and debris and want to ensure it is safe.
We want to avoid having to evacuate you a second time if this incident escalates, because it's been proven that people are likely not to evacuate.
You kind of know it's going to happen. But
Patrick McCoubry left this note for firefighters as he fled with his wife and 3 kids and their dog, relying on doorbell cameras for updates.
It's been an emotional roller coaster. It's like, you wake up and like I said, you check the cameras and you see that your house is still standing and you're happy. And then we go to the park last night and we see flames erupting again right above our house, and it's a little bit scary.
An online service has been launched to allow evacuees to check the status of their homes. Kelowna's city manager says this was necessary because of the number of properties that have been impacted. Anne-Marie.
It's a heartbreaking situation for so many. Thank you, Vanessa. And behind the front lines of the fire in West Kelowna, one of the more than 500 firefighters became a Canadian citizen from the only place he could. This is Popcombe Fire Chief Walter Roos taking his oath of citizenship over Zoom in the back of a parked firefighting vehicle. Immigration Minister Mark Miller posting this photo, congratulating Chief Roos and calling him a hero. Roos is originally from the Netherlands, but he has made Canada home for the past 18 years. First responders in the air and on the ground are being hailed as heroes in the Kelowna region. Miss Pumbaa the pig, who was too stubborn to leave with her owners when fire engulfed their ranch, was found unharmed by a helicopter pilot who threw down some granola bars to help her out. She's now being cared for by fire crews until her owners can return home. And pets that accompanied their owners from Yellowknife to Edmonton now have exclusive access to a new dog park.
They've been through a lot, and anything we can do to improve their quality of life, we try to.
More than 450 pets are registered at the Edmonton Expo Center.
It's just great having a dog by your side, dealing with situations like that.
A week since the territory's capital began evacuation, those trying to return home are being urged to stay away and not impede firefighting efforts. Canada's Prime Minister wrapped up his 3-day cabinet retreat in Charlottetown today with a pledge to millennials. Justin Trudeau says he owes younger Canadians action on the high cost of living. As CTV's Kevin Gallagher reports, the Liberal leader's promise comes as he tries to win back the country's largest voting bloc.
In front of his revamped cabinet, the Prime Minister acknowledged the affordability crisis is hitting younger Canadians especially hard.
To young Canadians, I want to say something. You've had 2 crucial years of adulthood dramatically interrupted by COVID, and then you were hit by global inflation and increased interest rates. We owe it to you to take action.
The admission his government needs to do more comes after a recent poll found the Liberals trailing the Conservatives by 11% among millennials and 4% with Generation Z.
The Prime Minister appointed himself the Minister of Youth after he was elected in 2015 because of how important millennials were to the Liberal success, and that's true in 2019 and 2021.
Housing affordability is a major concern for younger Canadians, and more are turning towards Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre as he blames Trudeau for high housing costs.
The reason young people are showing their support for me is because they know that I can deliver affordable homes, more powerful paychecks, and lower costs.
I think we need to give Mr. Poilievre credit that he is tapping into the housing grief that a younger demographic feels, which has then given rise to a disillusion with democracy, and he's tapping into that anger.
The Liberals are promising to address affordability, but political analysts warn the results are lacking.
It is difficult, I think, when you're the incumbent and you have been in the helm this whole time. And there's a sense in which, even if every single thing is not your fault, people are going to still be saying, yes, but you're the boss, you're accountable.
While the next election isn't expected until 2025, there is a sense of urgency to address these issues, with the Conservative leader calling for Parliament to resume nearly a month ahead of schedule. Anne-Marie?
Thank you, Kevin. Well, a controversial step taken by the Ontario government purportedly to address the housing crisis is under review by the country's top police force. The RCMP confirms it's weighing whether to launch an investigation into the Conservatives' rezoning of protected lands for development. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
The RCMP is now looking into whether any laws were broken when the Ontario government opened up thousands of acres of protected land last year to development.
If they ask the RCMP to investigate it, they believe there's something that requires further investigation.
This comes 2 weeks after a searing report from the province's Auditor General, who found the decision to allow building on protected Greenbelt land was heavily influenced by well-connected developers. Last fall, the province removed more than 7,000 acres of land that had been protected as part of the province's Greenbelt, farmland, forest, and wetland that is off limits to development. The Auditor General's report says the process was biased in favor of certain developers and landowners who had timely access to the housing minister's chief of staff. That chief of staff, Ryan Amato, resigned yesterday. And both Premier Doug Ford and Housing Minister Steve Clark have said they weren't aware of how the specific sites were chosen.
The idea that this lone rogue staffer was responsible for all of these Greenbelt headaches, it's not true, and it will be demonstrated to not be true.
According to the Auditor General, it was the developers who successfully lobbied the government to have the sites they owned open up for construction, increasing the value by billions.
The legislature needs to be recalled so that we can get answers and so that we can reverse this terrible decision to pave over the Greenbelt.
The Ford government has maintained this land is needed to build more homes in a province facing a housing shortage. But trying to solve one crisis may have caused another.
The fact that the RCMP are now looking at this, whether it's a formal investigation or not, is almost beside the point at this point. The fact that the police have been called in to look at this matter shows that it's moved beyond just a political crisis and is now potentially a criminal matter.
This case had been in the hands of the Ontario Provincial Police, who have transferred it to avoid any perceived conflict of interest. It will now be up to the RCMP to determine whether a full criminal investigation is necessary. Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Heather. Former New York City Mayor and Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani surrendered to authorities in Georgia today to face 13 charges for his alleged role in a plot to subvert the 2020 U.S. election.
It's an attack on not just me, not just President Trump, not just people in this indictment, some of whom I don't even know. This is an attack on the American people.
Reporters swarmed the 79-year-old as he left Atlanta's Fulton County Jail. Inside, the former prosecutor posed for a mugshot and was ordered to pay $150,000 bond. Former President Donald Trump is expected to turn himself in tomorrow. Canada's largest railway company is accused of tracking a train operator after hours through a tablet given to them for work. The dispute is raising questions about employee privacy when it comes to company devices. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
Accused of tracking more than just their trains and cargo.
It's spying, it's wrong, it's illegal in our view.
The Teamsters Union tells CTV News that CN Rail has been caught monitoring the whereabouts of a train operator outside of work hours using a company-issued tablet.
They did not tell us that this was going on. They did not seek consent from the workers to use geolocation data.
The union is concerned that more employees could have been tracked by CN, in part because their findings were uncovered by accident.
Through a disclosure process where the company was forced to disclose why they were disciplining a worker.
Declining a request for an interview, a brief written statement from CN Rail says the company uses data from GPS to ensure the safety of its employees while on duty, as well as its equipment and property.
It's going to be pretty hard to think of a legitimate business reason to track someone outside of their work hours.
The allegations raise larger questions for millions of Canadian workers who have a company-issued laptop, phone, or other devices.
We hear everyone talking about the right to privacy and suing for invasion of privacy. The reality is there is very little legislation in Canada dealing with privacy.
In 2022, the Ontario government was the first province in the country to release electronic monitoring legislation. Employment lawyer Stuart Rudner says companies are free to use surveillance software to monitor their workforce, as long as they're transparent about it.
Where companies get into trouble is where they don't tell employees that they're being monitored.
These high-tech problems have low-tech solutions, according to cybersecurity analysts.
I like to put a privacy tab on my camera so I can ensure that my camera is turned off. Make sure that you're using your own cell phone. Make sure that you're using your own tablet. Turn your work devices onto airplane mode if you're worried about location being tracked.
The Teamsters Union plans to fight CN Rail, confirming that their lawyers are in the process of sending a complaint to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Brampton, Ontario.
Coming up after the break. India's jubilation over a landmark lunar landing. Plus, an Indigenous community gets a special visit from hockey's most coveted prize. India has made a historic leap in space exploration by being the first country to land a rover at the lunar South Pole. The successful mission could be a critical step in the quest for water outside Earth. As CTV's John Venavali Rao reports, India is over the moon.
This, the joyous reaction across India, moments after the Prime Minister and so many others watched the landing. A country boldly venturing to a part of the moon where few have gone before.
Sir, we have achieved soft landing on the moon. India is on the moon.
The probe, Chandrayaan-3, gently descending to the surface and landing India membership into an elite club, just the fourth spacefaring nation to ever achieve such a lunar touchdown.
This will remain the most memorable and the happiest moment for all of us, for our team Chandrayaan-3.
A moment that comes just days after a Russian spacecraft spun out of control and smashed into the moon.
We have a liftoff.
In 2019, India had also tried and failed to make a landing, a reminder of just how hard space can be.
This success belongs to all of humanity.
This is the first time a craft has soft landed near the moon's south pole, where there are deposits of water ice, which could be used to help sustain a future moon base and be a source of drinkable water, oxygen, and rocket fuel.
Having that resource so readily available to us upon landing would be a huge, huge plus as far as any surface operations are concerned.
Chandrayaan-3 has a small rover on board. And the landing, a moment of huge national pride.
We feel very proud to be Indians today.
India is a rising space power with aspirations to also send astronauts into orbit on its own.
We will be now looking at putting the man in space, putting a spacecraft around Venus.
And showing the world it too can reach for the stars and touch the moon. John Venavali Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a walk to remember.
It was expected to be a quick recovery, but unfortunately things didn't quite go as planned.
Waking from a coma days before her dream wedding. It was a dream wedding none of the guests will ever forget. The bride-to-be woke up from a coma just days before walking down the aisle. CTV's Brent Lael on her incredible recovery.
From this
Start again.
to this. In the span of 4 days, Sarah Kempinska has an autoimmune condition called GPA, which makes breathing difficult.
2 weeks before my wedding, I had a routine surgery to widen my airway, and it was expected to be a quick recovery, but unfortunately things didn't quite go as planned.
She immediately called her sister Anna, who is an emergency physician at London's Children's Hospital.
The body reacted wrong, and I ended up being put into a medically induced coma.
As a medical professional, you know all about the medicine side of things and you're usually in control of what's going on, but it's a whole different ballgame to be a family member.
4 days before her wedding, she awoke from the coma.
And I couldn't walk at that time, so I came out of the coma and I would walk about 5 or 10 steps with a walker, feel incredibly sick and weak and have to sit down, and so the nurses were amazing and the physiotherapists as well. They would walk with me and just sort of take their time, but I think they really made it their goal to get me to the wedding.
While family members helped finish the planning of the big day, which was 2 years in the making, she was able to marry the man of her dreams.
I think adrenaline really helped, but my dad was there to support me, and my brother was sort of on the sidelines. He wanted it to be just me and my dad walking down and having that special father-daughter moment that we wanted for so long.
Wedding day was such a joyous day. It was, I say to Sarah, it's one of the happiest days of my life. I think we were all so exhausted from what had happened over the past 10 days. So many happy tears just to see them get married and support each other and have her smile.
3 months later, Sarah is now back to work full-time and thanking the physicians at LHSC who helped her. She says she's now working with doctors to begin family planning. Brent Lale, CTV News.
What an incredible story. After the break.
He's setting a good example for our younger generation that anything is possible.
The triumphant return of a Stanley Cup champion. There were celebrations on a First Nation in Manitoba today as Zach Whitecloud came home with the Stanley Cup. He won the trophy with the Vegas Golden Knights in June. He is the first player from his small community to make it to the NHL. CTV's Manitoba Bureau Chief Jill Makashon finds out how Whitecloud is inspiring a new generation of players.
It was a homecoming that had Vegas flair and all the tradition and respect of the past, as Sioux Valley Dakota Nation celebrated the return of their hero. Zach Whitecloud raised the Stanley Cup in the place he called home, a small First Nation in southwestern Manitoba, once a dot on the map, now forever connected to the cup.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to come and celebrate. A dream of mine since I was a little kid.
Here, people don't just see the star defenseman. They see the boy who played on the coldest days on the outdoor rink. Tenacity and talent that ultimately led Whitecloud to the NHL and that Stanley Cup win.
He's setting a good example for our younger generation that anything is possible.
In Winnipeg Jets country, this day there are only Vegas fans. This young hockey player traveled from Alberta to see his hero.
And I started to watch him more and more, and then the year later I seen him win the cup and I got excited about that.
Small moments that bring excitement and gratitude and the dream of something bigger.
I'm usually center or left wing.
So maybe an NHLer one day?
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully, right? Yeah.
Sioux Valley's first NHL player is now also its first Stanley Cup champion, with the expectation there will be more to come. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Sioux Valley, Dakota Nation.
That's good to see. That's our newscast for this Wednesday. I'm Anne-Marie Meadowake. For Omar and all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.